Oh yeah, watch it on your Golden Heights, public input session number 1.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome all of you. It's a great crowd out here tonight. I'm going to open with a few remarks, and then Mr. Hugh Sutherland has agreed that he'll give us a quick history of the building itself for 10 minutes, and then we'll open it for discussion. Because, again, clearly you need to understand that we're consulting with you. This is not a public hearing in a formal way, but it's a what do you think night. And so we have not bought the building, but we do need to keep track of the pros and cons. So when you stand up, would you indicate whether you're against the acquisition or for the acquisition, so we can keep a rough tally. We need to do proper diligence in terms of the response of the committee, so that if we decide not to buy it, that we get our damage deposit or our deposit back. So, that's the evening. To begin with, and I'm not going to set a lot of rules in terms of people speaking. I think I'd like to encourage council to treat it like a hearing, and for us to gather information as much as possible, to answer questions. I'm sure there'll be some dialogue between people. I think that we need to have the freedom to do that. If everybody is polite, if nobody's using airtime inappropriately, let's not have a bunch of restricting rules. So let me begin. We were sitting here, and as you can see, straight out the window is Golden Heights. And, it's the middle of winter, and we're watching the ice that was coming from the broken pipe deteriorating the front porch, and we're saying to ourselves, is there not something the city should do to save this piece of antiquity? We are in business. We are a city that runs itself as a business. We make strategic purchases around the community of various properties from the Land Reserve Fund. However, we are supportive of business, and we try not to put ourselves into a competing position with business. But to say that we're not a business is wrong. We operate like a business. This is something that we saw as an opportunity. We need to look at it. The fact is, the money has in the land reserve can't be used for operating, so we understand that. We also understand that the cost of that building can be the operating cost, the cost to keep it up, to cut the lawns, to heat it, all of those things. So having said that, I'm going to call on the esteemed gentleman who lives just down the road, Mr. Hugh Sutherland, who will give us a 10-minute introduction to the building. If you wouldn't, Mr. Sutherland? Thank you very much. And then I think he will probably favor us also with his opinion on the matter. However,
oh God, will you get it?
But
in 10 minutes?
In 8 if you like.
The esteemed Mr. Hugh Sutherland. Thank you.
Esteemed.
I do it. You want it. To track just briefly the history, the house was built by G.W. Averill before the turn of the century. I mark it as 98. All the materials for that house, that is the finished number, was all brought in by wagon from Marcus, which is the railhead at that time, the Great Northern. We didn't have rail in here until 1900 and thereabout. So all of it was brought in by railway and then hauled up onto the site and put together. I have in my possession at home, I didn't bring it, a large scrapbook, filled with pictures taken of the house in progression of its development. So at that particular time, the gullies leading from the river to the base of the house property, which constituted coulees, were forded on Corduroy Road. So you have to understand that we're reaching right back into the very beginnings of Grand Forks. G.W. Averill was an entrepreneur who came out of Pennsylvania with his brother, roughed it across the country, went into silver and Butte, made himself a big fortune, and the 5 Manley brothers bought the Doc Averill, as he was called, into Grand Forks because he had a lot of money, and they wanted money in Grand Forks to develop it. He was a property owner here in great quantity. It is said to, in my hearing by the old-timers, that he had 2 freighting companies. He ran several properties downtown which were wiped out by one or both of the fires that swept through this area in the early days. He died in 1919 of the flu epidemic in Seattle, and his son Harold married Effie Taylor, who lived upstairs in this building, in somewhere in this area, was living quarters for the caretaker of the post office at that time. He then, with his mother, negotiated the sale of the property to the Moore family. One descendant, Rosalie Moore, still lives in Grand Forks. It was from the Moore family in 1956 that we bought the property. There was nothing written down. There was no agreement of sale. We did it on a handshake. We stated the price, we stated the interest rate, and we shook around to Brother Bill, Brother Frank, and Sister Eva. These are the 3 descendants of Frank Moore Sr. And thereby we acquired the property at a ridiculously low price, $3,500. But a lot downtown, $50. So figure it's relative. It's all relative. So you understand that. We then, of course, bought it because it was there. And it was sort of a romantic relationship between me and the house. Not knowing what I was going to do with it, but quickly the idea formed that I would open it to tourists coming through. As I had it, and until 1990, the interior of the house, though dilapidated, though tired, plaster falling off the walls and ceilings, it was the original. Frank Moore did not change a thing. He would not alter. He would not put in a service doorway. He would not put steps in where the steps weren't. It was kept exactly as is. And on this scroll of maps, which I have here, were maps of the house done by, in 1986, by 3 architectural students under the direction of Mike Akers, who at that time was president of the Museum Society. And he arranged to have these students come in. We allowed them full access, and every single 2x4, 4x6, or 4x8, or 12 is diagrammed in this. It's most detailed, all dimensions given, so that if you wanted to recreate Golden Heights on another location, here are the plans, and you could work from that. The property at one time consisted of a carriage house down by the road, down by the highway. That was burned in 1932 during the Depression. There were itinerant people all through the country, and this, we believe that these folks stayed overnight and somebody dropped a match. It was a rather august building with a teak and maple flooring in the upstairs for a dance floor, and downstairs they had the space for carriages and horses and hay storage upstairs. Then, of course, also there was a servants' quarters, which were latterly used as a chicken coop. There is the pony stable where Mrs. Averill had her saddle pony. Then, of course, there was the Rose Cottage at the back. These have all gone, except the pony stable, and it's still in place. Behind the house, there was an ice house standing over a well, which was blown right out of the rock bed itself into a hole of about 6 feet deep, which caught a spring from the mountain, and that was used for water supply until water was brought up. And the old idea of the coiled pipe with the wire wound around it, and that came up alongside the sidewalk. We had the house under our jurisprudence, and we opened it up to the public, furnishing it sparsely, but with period furniture, some of which we sold and some of which we have retained. During that time, 1970, the Averill family in force came up to Grand Forks to visit, and so they appeared. And here was Eppie Taylor in her advanced years and semi-invalided, plus her 3 children. We got the whole family history. She wrote me a biography of Dr. Averill, which I have and was published in the Boundary Historical Society's publication. And one of the Moores and I, that is Mrs. Cuff, and I colluded on an article about the house itself, also in the Boundary Historical Society's publication. We reached the point where it was time to let it go, and in 1990 we sold it to a fellow whose last name was Barrow, coming from Regina, and he wanted to do it over for his wife. Things went bad for him, and he then lost the house back to the credit union, and they, of course, then transacted, and it was resold again. Now, during the time from 1990 to the present, the interior of the house was radically changed to accommodate the new purpose, which was a bed and breakfast and a restaurant. And many of you here, I think, probably went to the restaurant on occasion. We liked having a restaurant right next door. It was very, very handy. We just skip across and have dinner. So this is what you have. Now then, to move on to objective things, what is original about the house? Not much. The front face, that is the western facing wall, and the north facing wall are as they were. The south facing wall has been, I have to face east. The south facing wall and the back has been extended some distance to accommodate the hot tubs and whatever, plus the extension of that. And this was extended to accommodate those add-ons to the accommodation of the building. The inside has been totally altered. So you could understand that the person who buys it is not getting the original, nor are you, if you buy it, getting the original. You are getting what is left after the renovation. There's no restoration. Please don't believe that for a minute. When you walk in the front, I can picture it all because we were there. And the time is up. All right. My timekeeper has.
Your wife has spoken.
Yes. So in closing, I would say that is what you're getting. I'd be pleased to be consulted if you have any questions you wish to ask me. These plans I would leave with you, Your Worship, in your keeping, so that you can have immediate access to them. What do I think of it? The cost of the city taking on this property, I don't know what their resources are. I can't say that I know what monies they have to work from. I do know that the slag pile is diminishing. The huge slag piles that I remember aren't there anymore, and that's your golden goose. And as a consequence of that, I hesitate on these financial times as they are, and listening carefully to the Business Channel daily, I know that the future is not bright. There is not a quick recovery from this recession. And I don't know what we have to lean upon to carry us through to the other side of it.
So I would take it this is a vote against the acquisition?
I would hold a decision, not that I don't have the intestinal fortitude to say no or yes, but I'm concerned that you put pencil to paper and come up with the cost of keeping that operating, the cost of maintenance, the replacements, the painting, the groundscaping, the tax base that it's not there, and the cost of the utilities, the insurances, know that the parking is not what it could be, and just to steal a moment from the next person's time, the guests, in one case, If you've got good brakes, you can park on that hillside. If you don't, then there was a honeymooning couple. They got up in the morning, the car was gone. They found it down by our gate. The brakes had given way. The thing had been parked nose down, so it took off, got to the first curve, came around, partway around, and then it went over and leapt through the air and landed down by our...
Surely they were preoccupied.
They didn't... Your Worship, they didn't know it even happened until they went looking for the car.
Okay, well, you've thrown another wrinkle in here in the conditionally supportive category. So I guess we're going to need that middle ground for some people to
Yes.
take. Thank you, Mr.
If you can
Sutherland.
afford it, I'd say buy it.
Yes.
But
okay.
if you can't, don't touch it. Thank you very much.
Okay, and
I guarantee I will not be as long as you. David Jansen, good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm here to support the purchase of the Heritage House. There's an old saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Now is one of those times. To do nothing in tough economic times is not an option. We must be proactive. To stand idly by and let this fine house fall apart is neither wise nor in the best interests of the city. Good use must be made of this rare treasure. Vision is the key. Vision in realizing the many uses this house could be put to. Vision in understanding this may be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Vision to act and not be afraid. Thank you.
and further.
Good evening, Your Worship, Council, Gord Nichols. Been in Grand Forks for 30 years. Been chair of Abbeyfield for the last about 10 years, I guess, or no, not that long, but about 5 or 6 years. And also I'm a director on Abbeyfield BC chapter. I speak against the purchase. And one of my main reasons is the experience of Abbeyfields elsewhere. Abbeyfield is a society formed in England, and it had its start in renovating old homes and accommodating seniors in experience in BC. I have a few examples. There's a house in Victoria. It was built by a Scottish baron, he built it in the standard of a Scottish baronal mansion.
Dunsmuir.
No, it's not. It wasn't Dunsmuir, but he couldn't afford the upkeep of the thing, and it fell into disrepair. The government used it for a while. They used it for some army facilities and a few other things. Count de Mazy bought it just after the war for a very, very cheap price. It's got 5 acres of beautiful grounds, and he lived in it. Was an orchid fancier and had a big, large orchid garden. When he was getting in advanced years, he offered it to Abbeyfield on the condition that he be allowed to, Abbeyfield would support him and maintain it in the house until his demise, and after that it would be Abbeyfield's. The grounds are maintained by a society of retired Bouchard Garden gardeners, so there's no cost there. They have grants from the BC government, they grant grants from heritage foundations, grants from everywhere. They're going broke. They can't afford to maintain the people. It was an old residence that was converted to, and you can't convert old residences to modern purposes. There's a house in Vancouver. It's leased to Abbeyfield for $1 a year. The city maintains the exterior. They put the new roof on when it needed roofing. They put new piping in when they need it. They're going broke. They can't afford the other maintenance on an old building that's not suited for the purpose. They can't get tenants to come in because there's small rooms, there's narrow hallways. all of the features of an old house is converted to a purpose that isn't suited. There's a house in Kelowna. Again, it was one that was an old house that was converted. Beautiful house, beautiful grounds, very active volunteers. They're having great difficulty. Their thinking now is, let's sell it and buy it and build a modern building that will actually accommodate a purpose-built building. In Trail, Abbeyfield was offered these Cominco's Managers Building, free of charge. Nope. It would be $1.5 million to convert it to it. They had to turn it down. You can't make $1.5 million on 10 residents. So for those reasons, it's a beautiful building. I wish somebody would grab it and maintain it as a private residence or some other use if they can. But please, if you buy it in the name of the city, you're going to own it, and you're going to own all of the costs forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Further.
Your Worship and council members, on behalf of my husband who's watching hockey, which is more important. Well, anyway, he's watching hockey, so my husband and I and my mother are firmly opposed to this due to the economic times. I know how much the city spent to restore that shoebox that became our courthouse, and I don't think we can afford this luxury in this day and age. I think there's a lot of arts and cultural stuff happening. I really appreciate that. I'm all in favor of arts and culture, but there's 3 people here that really believe that we do not have the money, and I agree with the gentleman saying that it's a losing battle because it is a very costly thing. So we are opposed.
Please, sorry, I didn't get your name.
Willie
Willie.
Treveri.
Treveri.
Mr. Mayor and Council, my name is Jane Pring. I'm here with my husband, and we oppose the purchase of Golden Heights for the following reason. There's no plan been put forward by this council as to what you're going to use that building for. Therefore, we have no idea what kind of return we're going to get on our money. You're setting a precedent. That is being described as a heritage building. And we know from Hugh that it can't really be considered a heritage building because of all the renovations that were taking place. But by doing so, you're leaving the door open for other people in this community who own heritage homes who can come to this council and say, we can no longer afford to maintain our home. You've bought Golden Heights, therefore you should buy mine.
Right on.
Thank you. There's no adequate parking for large rigs or for trucks and trailers. We've already spent a lot of money on the old courthouse for an arts venue, so why do we need another one when that one right now is perfectly adequate for our needs? What's the cost of repairs for this building? Nobody has said anything about that. And our main reason is why, in this economic time, you sent everyone in this community a letter telling them what you were cutting back on. You can't cut the boulevards all the time. You can't have flower pots. One of the beautiful points of this city and why we moved here 17 years ago was coming down that boulevard and seeing it nicely cut, the trees trimmed, the flowers all around. You're cutting back on all that and you want to spend $500,000 on a derelict building? So our 2 votes are against. Thank you.
Further.
Mr. Mayor, councillors, I have to animately say that both myself and my wife are opposed to this concept. Unadulteratedly, animately opposed on several rationales. Number one, 2 councils ago, there was a lot of folks that held council responsible for buying, at that time, Sand Creek properties. At that time, people were, frankly, drawn and pillared for it. One thing about Sand Creek, there was no holding costs. There was no lawns to cut. There was no old building to take care of. There was no need to develop a business plan. It was just raw land. You can argue the pluses and minuses of it. It's irrelevant. This building has costs. It has serious costs. The talk about using it, as has been discussed by the lady previously, there is no parking. People can't walk up that stairs, even when it was a restaurant that we all enjoyed. You could get 4, 5, 6 cars up there. That was it. There's lots of property available for uses. We already have a wonderful cultural center in the form of the old courthouse building. We've spent lots of money. We're in an area now that has lost basically 2 industries, one permanently, one that's down. Tax base is not going to change. In fact, I would suggest to you that this coming year, when the assessments come out, if people don't appeal their assessments as too high, they're crazy, because they will be. You'll see a different shrunk tax base based on property values. And in these times, this council, in my opinion, and I do not want to criticize, these are thankless jobs being mayor and council. I'll be the first to say that, and I'm very reluctant to criticize this. But this comes at the wrong time, frankly, with an idea that has no significance for the community and only has cost. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Smith.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. And it's against the law to shoot people, and I have a lot of witnesses now. So, to start with, I think it's the most ludicrous thing that you guys have come up with yet, even though you've done quite well on a couple of other things. If you're going to start buying houses on the hill and stuff that are absolutely useless, except they're a beautiful old building, and that's why they're there, you can buy my store. Part of it is heritage. It used to be a blacksmith store back in the early 1900s. The Grand Forks Hotel will probably be coming up for sale. It was built in 1898, so you better buy that. And the Winnipeg is probably going to come down as soon as they decide to retire. And as you can see right now, the place is plugged with people. And I remember about 5 years ago or something, we were talking about building a thing called a community hall. Oh, well, guess what? If we were in a community hall right now, there's some people come up here and they even left again because there was no place to be. So we were in a community hall. Instead of spending $1 million on the hill, because that's what it's going to cost you by the time you fix it all up again and everything else. And as the lady said before, parking up there is absolutely ludicrous. I have no idea whether the tourists coming through here with a 40-foot motorhome know how to drive up that hill or not, but I doubt it. And if they did get up there, they sure as hell wouldn't turn around to come back down. So anyway, I think we should have the community hall, and if you want to spend a bunch of money, go and do that. The taxes right now that we're paying are out of sight for a small town. I'm paying pretty near $500 a month on my store here, and a buddy of mine's got a place in Maple Ridge, which is about 2.5 times the size of my place, and he's paying less taxes, and he's got a business, same as I am. I mean, it's out of hand, it's out of sight, and you guys are going crazy. I mean, that stupid courthouse deal, they bought that, and I'm not blaming you this time, and moved that over there. Think about it. The courthouse could have been held right here. The judge could have sat where you're sitting. The lawyers could have sat where you guys are all sitting. How many people attend a courthouse? They could have had that here once a week, twice a week, whatever the hell they needed. If you wanted to go and wreck the old courthouse and build that new piece of thing over there, whatever it is. I am totally upset to the point of where I have told my wife and I've told a few of my friends, if this thing gets any worse in Grand Forks, I'm going to sell out and get out. And the point is, well, thank you. And the point is, I can't even sell my places right now. It's my son just put his house up for sale, and the real estate laughed at him. You know, I mean, it's out of hand. Quit spending our money that we don't have, and don't raise our taxes to the point where we got to leave town to go somewhere where we can afford to live. Just don't do it, okay? Forget the bloody place on the hill. Thank you.
Yes, before we go further, though, just as people might be leaving, can we have a, no, come up, please. Yeah, come on up. Can we have a show of hands? How many people are opposed to it? Raise your hands. How many people are in favor of it? Okay. All right, just, you know, in terms of our tally here tonight, that's quite indicative, but we'll go on with people's opinions.
You forgot to ask how many of us are undecided.
Oh. Undecided. Okay. Yeah. All right, thank you. That's an oversight on my part.
My name's Sylvia Treptow. Thank you for having this hearing. I saw the notice in the paper, and I was just wondering, and I've asked several people involved with City Hall, whether there are any financial informations available to the public so that we can... I was wondering if there were any financial statements available to the public so that the public can make an informed decision on what's happening. Are we going to have another fiasco like the $900,000 almost that was spent on the renovations to the courthouse? This $500,000 for the purchase, that's just the beginning of the costs. Can we afford to have more taxes to support this heritage building? Are we going to be renovating it to return it to the heritage status? What uses is the building going to be put to? Have you got a list of that? We don't have enough information to make an informed guess as to whether or not we should approve or not approve.
Right. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Further comment? Mr. Famino. Yes, Mr.
Your Worship, councillors, before I'm going to say which way I'm going, I'd like to just have a few clarifications. Rumor in the street, that's all it's going to be, it's a rumor in the street. I understand that there was a private offer for the building and lands, and the city blindsided them and gave them a higher offer. That's number one. Now, I'd like to get that clarified. And also, I just heard that it's not a heritage status at this stage. I thought it was. Oh, I thought that...
I believe it is in the heritage registry that the regional district has. That doesn't mean it has great heritage value. I'm not indicating any opposition.
Well, I'm just going by the previous owners, and I thought they had the tax concession because of being heritage and that. That's the only thing I'm going on. So I think before, and I have to agree with the lady here before me, is that there has to be a plan of what the heck is going to happen with it and what the cost will be. Because I understand, like anything else, anybody does anything, a business plan is a footprint. And if we know what's happening, or know at least some indication how it's going to happen, then a decision can be made. But just going on a wing and a prayer, I'm afraid I'm not with you on a wing and a prayer. Thank you.
Your Worship, councillors, I work for the city. I'm president of the local GF Civic, and as you know, Your Worship, we're taking significant measures to reduce expenditures this year, which are going to result in significant reductions in service to the taxpayers in order to balance the budget. And it seems a prudent course of action to be fiscally responsible, and in taking these measures, we are going to see a reduction in services, and it seems that we would increase costs by owning this building. And I think given the situation of having to reduce costs, reducing services to the taxpayers, that it may be bad timing for us to take on any more liabilities as far as expenditures on a regular basis, since we are working very hard to reduce those expenditures, and that translates to reduced services. So I would have to say that I'm going to speak for myself as being opposed from that perspective, not for my membership. Thank you.
Well, Brian. Alan Waite. I have the property directly behind Golden Heights. And I think, after listening to everything I've heard so far, it's not something the city should be doing. There is a private offer evidently still kicking around out there, maybe more than one. As I understand it, it has gone into bankruptcy and they're trying to sell it for whatever they can get for it. I think it's best left to the private sector. It's set up as a restaurant and bed and breakfast. I think it's probably best used that way. And if the city's not planning to go into that business, they shouldn't be buying it.
To clarify, we have an offer that can be overturned at any time in 72 hours, I think, if there was a firm offer at or below what we've offered. So that market is not closed to those private entrepreneurs. I think that's just one of those great Grand Forks rumors that goes around. Further comment? Yes.
Your Worship, Council. My name is Dennis Fone. I guess I have a different look on this situation. First of all, what can you do with the place? Not having a business plan to go into this and buy it would be a terrible mistake. There aren't too many things you can do there because, it's been pointed out, the parking situation will not attract bigger vehicles, RVs, etc., and the handicap parking there is very limited. One thing you probably could do there is open up a high-class culinary school, since that's what the building was originally renovated to, a restaurant. There are quite a history of these schools being very successful. They require a partnership with a well-known restaurant and a well-known chef. Now, whether that person would be interested to come to Grand Forks or not would be somebody else's business besides my own in finding them. However, if you'd like to hire me, I'll go out and find you one. Having said that, there are grants available. A simple grant is called the Job Creation Partnership with the federal government. And since we all pay federal taxes, it's always nice to get as much of that money back that we can. That's a grant that allows the city, for instance, to hire workers to work on the project. You would have to all get permission, obviously, from the city union to allow that to happen. There would also have to be supervision of those workers. There are other grants through Western certification. For instance, one example of that would be the Christina Lake Art Gallery, which got $1 million in grants. I would really stress that you look at a business plan before you buy anything. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why you said you would pay $500,000 for something that nobody seems interested in buying, and then come up with a lower figure first. And let's see where the market settles. Why would you offer $500,000?
We started considerably lower, and they started considerably higher.
Then there must be somebody who wants it, because the longer it sits there, it will deteriorate.
6 years, I think.
And eventually, I mean, the history of this town is that if you leave a building alone for any period of time, eventually somebody's going to go in there, and just like the gatehouse that you made mention to, it won't be there anymore. That's a big danger to look at. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth, and I hope the best. Personally, I would love to see you rebuild Fireman's Park instead of doing this. Thank you.
He pointed out the risk of leaving the building empty.
Right, I would say that's one of those middle ones. I think we had a good idea for it. You're amongst friends. Come forth.
Mr. Mint, the owner of Johnny's Motel is outside the door. Maybe he wants to say something.
Yes, certainly.
Come on.
Dennis Tom T.H.
Councillor, just excuse me. Nervous. Just a few things to say, really. Golden Heights. I mean, as a proposition to buy this property, I think it at least warrants further investigation. We have we have an industrial base which is dwindling here, and if people are serious about developing the tourist industry, Golden Heights would really be a draw to the town. It could give the town an identity that perhaps it lacks now from the tourist point of view. I think at the very least it actually warrants some sort of further investigation. It would certainly give the town a little bit of what it doesn't have so far from the tourist point of view.
Could you pick up the mic so we can hear you, please? It's not picking you up. I'm sorry.
Oh, you want me to start again?
What's your name?
Okay, my name's Clive Robinson. I'm from Johnny's Motel. Purely, I'm not saying that I'm completely for it, but I think that buying Golden Heights at least warrants further investigation. The industrial base in this town is dwindling, and I mean, people have said that they want to develop Grand Forks as a tourist destination, and the possibility of having Golden Heights on the books as a draw to the city at least has to be worth looking at, because we get all the people that stay with us, we get an immense interest in the building. It really could be a focal point for the city. But I say I'm not 100% for it, but I think it at least warrants a real look to see whether it might be viable. So develop a tourist industry for this town. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Well, is that it for tonight? Because we will be having another meeting on the 25th to do this again, and between now and then there are a number of things that will happen. We have a number of interesting ideas that have come forward from people. The cooking school was one, Dennis, but a European-style youth hostel, the idea of displaying the fabric history of the Doukhobor culture, ideas like film schools. We've had 2 film companies that have asked for information on this in terms of the building itself and the uses that might be made of it as a film school. And we will certainly bring those things forward to the meeting of the 25th. If there is anything that's percolating, we'll present it. I hear you tonight, though, that there's an overwhelming feeling that we shouldn't get into this at this point without a good idea. So I thank you all for coming this evening. And yes, ma'am.
Just one quick question. On the 25th, will you have an approximate idea of what repairs are going to be required there and what the cost of the repairs would be?
If we're continuing to go forward with that, we no doubt will have that available. If something gels at this point, it is a really quick time frame that we've got here, but on the other hand, it's bringing some serious attention to this artifact of our community that has been an icon of the community for many years. During its transitions, it was an eyesore, but it has been an icon as well. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Has anybody ever checked that building for mold?
We did have an engineering study done on it.
Has there been?
Yes. We had a complete, thorough investigation of it, down to missing light switches and pipes that are out of line. So we have a really good idea of the basic structure of it. Also, Mr. Feminoff was involved in the renovations, I believe. So it's
Just a quick question then, Ben. For the 25th meeting, is there going to be more information available?
Yes.
Because I would like to, this one here of that the city blindsided an entrepreneur to buy it, I'd like to have some clarification on that.
I really find that difficult to believe when, like I said, the offer that we have on there can be turned over in 72 hours. If a buyer comes along and has a firm offer to the company that they will accept, and we have 72 hours to match it or get out.
Well, what I heard is that there was an offer that was accepted for $300,000, and the city went and offered the $500,000. That's what I heard. Now, I'm only saying that some of this will get clarified.
Yeah, well, certainly I would entertain that person to come forward and discuss it with us, because I can't see that being the case, knowing the ins and outs of real estate.
Will you have a business plan for us?
Pardon?
Will you have a business plan?
If we're still promoting this on the 25th, we'll have a business plan for an idea that will make money on it and pay for the upkeep.
I just want to reiterate something that the mayor. I want to reiterate something that the mayor said earlier at the outset, is that while we have put an offer forward, no decision has been made, and no decision will be made whether to proceed with the purchase of that property until we have heard from you. And that's the sole purpose of these meetings, and I think it's very important, and I'm very, very pleased to see the number of people that have come out tonight to voice their opinion, yay, nay, or maybe. And I think that's a very important part of the democratic process that this council is trying to promote.
Mr. Trevelyan.
I have two concerns. One being that the city sold property to Habitat for Humanity. Don't get me wrong, I'm not against Habitat for Humanity. And a year later, you contacted the people involved. Now you put an offer on the table for this house, and now you're having a meeting. What happens if your offer is accepted? There's nobody else. We're stuck with this building. Second point, I have a lot of admiration for museums. We have the local museum here. We have the Duke of War Museum. There's stuff in Fruitova. Why do we need to have another Russian museum? That was a proposal you just mentioned.
Well, I'm just listing a number of
redundant.
things that have been thrown out, but no, nothing is shaped up yet. And we didn't sell to Habitat, we gave to.
Well, whatever.
Right.
And then afterwards you contacted the people that lived in the area and were affected by it.
No.
Council, if I make your worship, it's just that was two different councils.
No, I don't mean you. I meant council in general, the previous council, and then this council had a meeting with the people that were affected after the fact.
Right.
And I know it wasn't your group here that sold it. However, I think we're putting the cart before the horse.
I hear what you're saying. The other thing is that the offer is conditional to purchase Golden Heights is conditional on the support of the community. And if the community is telling council, we don't support this option, then that purchase won't go through.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you all again for coming out. It's a great show of community interest, and I hear you.